Hey guys, first thanks for checking me out here at that old 240 guy on YouTube. I had mentioned in a previous video I was having a little issue with these IDS coilovers for the front of my S13, and I thought I'd go a little more in depth so somebody that was planning on ordering them, could know kind of what they're in for. So I ordered these a little over a month ago, and when they arrived, there was a bunch of stuff missing out of the box, like the upper spring cones and the adjusters and the Torrington bearings, which later, when talking to IDS, they're like, well, I'll have them drop shipped for you. And I said, well, what about the Torrington bearings? He's like, well, I said, you got to pay for them separate. He's like, yeah, but I'll go ahead and throw those in for you. And when I finally get the rest of the parts, a little over a month total later, they still were missing. But, shit happens, especially if there's two companies involved with getting you the finished product. But I could overlook all that. But when I go to put them together, I notice when I put the camber plate on there, it's really sloppy. But I'm like, well, let me put one in the car and see what happens and try to tighten the nut down on it. And as soon as I drop the car on the ground, you hear a big knock noise. So jacking it up and dropping it, you can see the shaft moving in the camber plate. And pretty tight, but figured I'd try this one here, do a lot of measurements and see actually what's going on. So basically, the best I can gather from talking to both, that IDS supplies this. Doing some measuring, that spherical bearing, you can see that bushing in there. So the lower half is piloting on the shaft, bigger portion. And then you have an adapter bushing in the top that's piloting off the threads. And when you start measuring, so the bushing they supplied, 592. Threaded area of the shaft is 545. And this is the clearance you got. That lower half of that spherical bearing in the camber plate is 706. The shaft OD is 662, so that's the clearance on the lower portion. Suggested clearance for those is like 2,000s, but I started looking around locally and found a bushing that I thought I could make work, and I had to, take a little off the outside. The height was a little too much, but basically got that thing to, it's 551 ID, threaded area of the shaft, end up with 6,000s clearance, which is a little over that 2,000s number, but I figured we'd give it a shot, see how it works. The funny thing is, this bushing that's supplied with the coilover that sets the height of this, it's 675 ID shaft diameter there, 13,000s clearance. So I don't know why they supply a bushing that's so friggin' big. And even the internal diameter where that spherical bearing pilots on the shaft is way too big. But I was hoping that that in itself at least would tighten up the top half. When you assemble it, and not cranking down on the nut, but then you notice that this ball is so tight in there. You put the strut on the ground, you physically can't move the plate. If you invert it and put your feet on the plate, you can move the strut body. So what you end up doing is when you tighten that to that, you lock that spherical bearing to the shaft, but the spherical bearing does not want to rotate in the housing. The shaft is locked to the camber plate, and when you turn the wheels, you're turning the strut body. So basically you're going to wipe the seals out of the piston in there. I mean, they said, well, it's probably a little tight. Well, I mean, this one actually is tight, but you can rotate it. When you start thinking about your OE stuff, I mean, well, we've never had any issues with people complaining about it, but they tell me maybe that bearing's just really tight in there and it's going to free itself up. How long will that take? Will it wipe the O-rings out, or however they seal that piston inside that? And by the time that happens, where you see fluid pouring out of it, judging by the conversations I had, I don't think they're going to warranty it anyway. And how long would that be down the road? Literally, it is, like I say, you can't pivot the plate unless you invert that thing, put your feet on it, and use the leverage of the whole length of this thing just to twist it. So how long do you think it's going to be before that thing gets loose enough that it'll rotate in that housing? Because it doesn't take a lot of force to turn the shaft. I mean, this is going to wear also, the seals. This would probably get easier and easier for you to rotate this shaft and the piston and the bore. So as you're waiting on this to free itself up, this is probably going to get even easier. So I never see this making itself right. Not to mention that, like, all the bushings that, the bushings they supply are so freaking sloppy that I have seen some people online complaining about theirs making noise. I looked at the black series. I mean, these with the bump stops I had to buy, spanner wrenches, the Torrington bearings, I mean, they start at $14.25 plus shipping and all that, tax. And by the time I buy all that other crap to go with them, spend time running around trying to find a bushing that will possibly work. And this is just a trial thing. I wouldn't probably run this bronze one in there. So trying to locate a steel bearing, see how good that one's going to work. But after all that, you look at those, I believe they're AFCO, the black ones they have. And you go, well, maybe if you bought the more expensive ones, they're $2,400. But they got the same camber plate on the top of them. Now, I don't know for sure that the shaft diameters are the same, but I'd be really scared to spend $2,400 and be going through the same issues. I haven't thought about the fix for that long, but what I did kind of think about was if I could put a small, either on both sides or either on the bottom or the top, put a Torrington bearing, if I can find one that'll ride on that small, maybe I could get one where that ledge is a little bit wider. Well, this one is a little bit wider than that one, but get a Torrington bearing that can ride on just the top or both sides. But I would have to take some off of this, because when you assemble it how they send it, like I say, that lock nut, the nylon, there's no threads sticking out of the nylon, which they say you might have to thin the shims out and all that, but this is definitely have to go down to be able to fit a bearing in there that I feel like ain't gonna wipe the shock out before this ever gets free. I tried dry lubricant on it. I mean, it's just so freaking tight, both of them. It's not gonna work. So I just thought I'd put this out there for anybody that's planning on putting a set of these on there, something to look for, because I mean, if you just bolt these things up and you don't pay attention, like, they're gonna be sloppy for one. But when you tighten that nut down on that and lock that shaft to that bearing, you're literally just turning the body, and that's gotta prematurely wear the seals out of them. And how long will that take to happen, I don't know, but it just seems like if you're gonna do it right. And I appreciate you all checking me out. Thanks.